Welcome everyone to the Friday series for the webinars, and Debbie McRae is joining me again today, and she's got the continuation. She started on 11/21, which may have been posted, right after that, for 10 ways a betraying partner can support their betrayed partner. And she got through part of them, and so she's going to pick up the list and resources from where she left off, maybe with a little overview. I don't know, but anyway. But it was such a great topic, and I was like, it's so practical. So if you missed that, I will put the link to the previous webinars in the chat. But if you're watching this video afterwards, hopefully you found both of them. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Debbie.
Thanks, Tammy. Well, like Tammy said, this is part two of ways a betraying partner can support a betrayed partner's emotional regulation, healing, trust, and in creating connection. So the webinar is directed primarily to the betraying partners. I encourage you to go back and listen to the first part if you haven't already, but if not, you're going to get a lot out of this one as well. So we are looking at this through the codependence lens, and we are viewing the betrayed partner as somebody who is deeply wounded due to the attachment disruption that takes place as a result of their betraying partner's out of control sexual behaviors, their sexual compulsivities, their sexual addictions. This causes their nervous system to go into overtime. And in that process, the betrayed partner is trying to find safety. So we don't look at the betrayed partner as crazy or too needy or someone who needs to get over it. Instead, we look at them through the compassionate lenses of they need safety. So I'm going to ask the betraying partners as you listen to this webinar to really start to look at your betrayed partners through the lenses of the fact that they have trauma and that they need safety. And the more safety they have, the more likely they're going to regulate, and the more likely then they're going to be able to focus on their own recovery. So it's really vital for the betraying partner to include as part of their own recovery plan clear and concrete steps to rebuild intimacy and trust. So it's not just about apologies, it's about consistent actions over time that starts to show the betrayed partner that you're reliable, that you are trustworthy, that you are being honest, and that you're caring. So we're going to focus on 5 more today. And before we get into those, I want to kind of take a little side trip about a couple of concepts that I talk to many betrayed partners about and to couples when I work with them. And it is about willingness and capacity. You see, both are really required in order to take these principles that I'm giving you and for you to implement them. So what is willingness? Willingness is about your motivation to change. So a betrayed partner is really looking to see, are you internally motivated to do your recovery? So oftentimes we see that dynamic show up where the betrayed partner is the one doing the motivation. They're the one trying to encourage their partner to do recovery, to see their therapist, to join a group, to try to have empathy. Well, that's what we call external motivation. And we know that lasting change is only rooted in internal motivation, or we call that intrinsic motivation. So external pressure from your betrayed partner might get you started into recovery or looking into certain areas, but there's got to be that internal willingness for you, the betraying partner, to keep going when it's hard, when it's inconvenient, or it's uncomfortable, which it will be. So what is capacity? Well, capacity is about abilities. So it's your ability to implement and use healthy skills and tools throughout your recovery process. So you're going to get better as you go along, as you repeat the healthy behaviors over and over again. So like I said, capacity is about the skills and the tools. So just some things to consider in those areas. Can you regulate your emotions? How are you doing with that? Can you tell the truth even when you're scared? So we talked last time about showing up with radical honesty. Can you sit in the discomfort of your betrayed partner's emotions without shutting down or overreacting? And are you consistently learning and practicing healthy coping skills? So capacity will grow for you as you're in therapy, as you're working in groups, when you're working with a sponsor, and you're actually doing the work, not just promising to do the work or saying you're going to do the work. Because your betrayed partner is watching. They're watching to see if you're willing to do what it takes to get better and to do your recovery. And they're also noticing if you've got the capacity, the skills and tools, and they want to see growth. So the willingness and the capacity, when you show that over time, again, create safety for you, for your betrayed partner, and there is safety within the relationship. So now let's walk through these 5 areas. And as we do that today, I want you to think about your willingness and your capacity. So because I went through 1 through 5 last time, today we're going to step in on principle number 6. So this one's going to be a little bit longer because this is about how you, the betraying partner, can help the betrayed co-regulate when they have triggers. And then we're going to talk about creating a trigger plan together. So betrayed partners have triggers, especially during the early months after disclosure and discovery. Their nervous system is on high alert. So your partner gets triggered, and it's something they're triggered by that they have no control over. It could be a thought, it could be a smell, a sensory thing, it could be an event, it could be driving down the road. And what happens oftentimes is the betrayed partner takes it personally. And it is not about you personally. It's not about you being bad, but it is about something that's related to the betrayal and to your past behaviors. So remember, it's their nervous system just telling them they're in danger, whether it is real or imagined. So your job in that moment is not to get defensive, not to try to minimize their experience, not to defend your ego. Your job in that moment is to create safety. So I want you to think about reframing how you're looking at the betrayed partner's triggers. So remind yourself when they're triggered that it's their nervous system doing its job. That their nervous system is just trying to protect them. You don't need to argue with their nervous system, but what you can do is you can help them soothe and calm down and their nervous system to regulate. So when you see them triggered, maybe you ask them, do you want comfort in this moment? Can you tell me what's going on? What do you need me to do for you right now? Do you need me just to sit here with you? Do you need me to listen to you? You can even acknowledge, I can see that something just hit you really hard, and just sit there in that moment with them. So some of the things you're going to need to do is, first of all, you're going to need to stay grounded and calmed. So you cannot dysregulate right when they're spinning out of control. Excuse me, you need to co-regulate. So that means 2 feet on the ground, slow your breathing, drop your shoulders, keep your voice low and steady. And again, just acknowledging, I can see you're really triggered right now. I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. Second thing, you're going to acknowledge the fact that they are triggered and that you're not going to argue or defend the reason why they're triggered. So you don't want to minimize the fact that they're in distress by saying things like, gosh, I'm doing so much better. Why are you still getting triggered? Or you keep getting triggered all the time. I think you need to go in and see your therapist about this, and you guys need to figure it out. I've actually had somebody come in and report that they were told that. So instead, you want to validate their experience. It makes sense to me why you're triggered, right? I understand your body's going into high alert and that you're not feeling safe right now. And then the next thing you're going to do is ask them what they need in the moment. So don't just assume you know what they need, but instead ask what would be most supportive for you right now. Do you need me to listen? Do you need me to reassure you? Do you need to talk? Do you need me to give you some space and circle back around? And then if they're needing information, then respect the fact that they need that information and give it to them. Also respect the fact that they're just going to have triggers and it's part of their healing. And as they're doing their work, you're going to see those triggers lessen and lessen and lessen, and their ability to emotionally regulate increase. Offer clear reassurance and transparency. So we see trauma responses in betrayed partners calm down when you provide clear and concrete information. So let them know what you're doing to create safety if that's what they're questioning. Validating their experience, giving them empathy are all ways for them to see that you are there to create safety. So don't over explain things. Don't become defensive. Just be predictably transparent. That's all they want. Give them the facts, give them the information. And then validate the impact of your behavior and what it's had on them and how it's caused the trigger. And I think that right there is reassuring that for them that you get it, that you understand that it's not something they're doing wrong, that it's something that happens as a result of your behaviors and the disclosure, the discovery they've had. And so that is why their body wants to keep them on high alert. And then if you make a mistake, just repair it. You're going to make mistakes. You're human, but repair is the key. So if you do get defensive, if you do shut down, then just call it out. Say, I think I'm defensive right now. I'm so sorry. Or I feel myself shutting down. Let me try that again. I really want to understand. Those are really important key phrases. So when you come back after making a mistake and doing the repair, what you're telling your betrayed partner's nervous system is that even if I blow it, I'm going to come back and I'm going to try to do it better. And then you do need to circle back at times to check in to see how they're doing. So put together a trigger plan as a couple. So build that safety together. My recommendation is that you write it out. So sit down, and especially now that we're moving into the holiday season, my recommendation is you have a trigger plan in place. So start by identifying, are there any common triggers that your betrayed partner has? It could be because it is the holidays. There's certain days around that. There's certain memories around that. It could be around travel. It could be around social media. It could be places, time of the day, anniversary dates, like I've already mentioned. So just sit down and see if you can identify, when both of you are both emotionally regulated, if you can identify what commonly triggers the betrayed partner, and then identify what the betrayed partner feels when they're triggered. How does it feel in their body? What are their thoughts they go into? So kind of recognize that. And then the next thing you do as part of that plan is to identify what helps. So would it be helpful for you, the betraying partner, to call a timeout and suggest that they do self-care? And again, we do that with both people agreeing that that's part of the plan. Of course, we want to include the empathy formula, the AVR formula, where you acknowledge their pain, you validate their feelings, and then you reassure them that you're doing your recovery, or you're there for them, that you're not going anywhere, that you're there to help them get better. You can also do grounding exercises with your partner. You can do slow breathing. You can do the 5 senses exercise that I've talked about so many times. You can go out and do a short walk together, because anything with that bilateral movement is very calming to the nervous system. And sometimes, if they give you permission, you can just sit quietly with them and hold their hand if that touch feels safe. So remember, you're going to avoid dismissing and saying things like you're overreacting. So that's part of your plan, the trigger plan. You're not going to debate and tell them that they're not being logical. You're not going to defend yourself by saying things like, I'm doing so much better now. Why aren't you? Why do you keep, telling me all the things I'm doing wrong? And don't walk away in anger. Don't stonewall and tell them you're done with the conversation, and don't retaliate. Remember, you can't erase your partner's triggers, but what you can do is you can create the safety and be a safe companion with them so that they learn to regulate and their window of tolerance increases more and more and more. Okay? So principle number 7 is do your own recovery work. So your partner isn't having to push you to do your recovery work. So we want to recognize that the betrayed partners at times work to manage the chaos that's created by the addiction, or you're acting out. So one of the greatest gifts that you can give your betrayed partner is not needing them to manage or push you into doing your recovery. So your betrayed partner shouldn't have to remind you to go to meetings. They shouldn't nag you about getting on your, therapist schedule. on a routine basis. They shouldn't have to ask you if you've checked in with your sponsor when they see you struggling. They shouldn't have to police your devices and your time. You should be willingly doing that and including them in that. So their nervous system is going to start to relax when they see you being willing and being capable in moving forward in proactively doing your own recovery. So what would doing your own recovery look like? Well, it would look like you having individual therapy with a CSAT therapist, and one that really understands the betrayed partner and is betrayed partner sensitive. It would be participation in group therapy or in a 12-step group, and that you're going on a regular basis. It would be having a clear sobriety and recovery plan and sharing it openly with your betrayed partner if that's part of your agreements. I believe that it is really important that the betrayed partner know exactly what you're doing for recovery, because it does create more safety for them. Then letting them know that you're regularly checking in with your sponsor, that you have an accountability partner that you're checking in with, and then actively learning and practicing your own emotional regulation tools. So as they see you doing better emotionally, they see you more regulated. Again, it's creating safety. And then another thing that I think is really important is having consistent recovery check-ins with your partner if they want it. And we're going to talk about that a little more in depth in just a moment. So principle number 8 is that you need to respect your betrayed partner's boundaries and pacing around any kind of intimacy. And I'm talking about closeness and about connecting in what we do. So we are talking about boundaries, and boundaries do matter. So we need to have good boundaries, and you need to understand what your betrayed partner needs around really hard emotional conversations, around technology and information. So that would be things like your phones, your devices, location sharing, around any physical touch. So that could be hand holding, hugs, anything like that. It could even be physical space between the two of you. And then, of course, sexual intimacy, which might be if it's off limits for now, or if it is something that your partner is willing to be a part of, then what does that look like for them? And you want to honor their boundaries that they put in place around that. Another huge part in creating that safety is if your partner says no, that you respect that. So your partner's nervous system, oftentimes when we're talking about closeness and we're talking about intimacy, they just want to feel like it's okay if they say no, that you're not going to pressure them, that you're not going to push them, and that you're not going to punish them if they're not ready to have you hold their hand or sit in their physical space or have sexual intimacy. So your job in this area is just to honor the pace that feels the safest for your partner. Don't rush them. Don't make them feel guilty. Don't make them feel anxious. But instead, what you can say to them is things like, your boundaries really do matter to me, especially because I know it's hard for you, and letting them know that you don't want to pressure them into anything unless they're ready for it. Principle number 9 is to create some safe and structured connection rituals. So I really like the idea of having some consistency within the relationship that creates safety for the betrayed partner. And we do that through connection and rituals. So rituals will help the partner experience predictability. They will then be able to lean into you. They will not disconnect, and they're not going to fear waiting for another shoe to drop. So that's why I like this predictable recovery check-in once a week. It can be short. It needs to be honest and non-defensive. You can share everything from things like the meetings or group you've attended, maybe a takeaway from that group, maybe something you've learned about yourself as you've maybe gone and seen your therapist. And you can even share any struggles you've had, any urges, and what you've done to stay safe. What is the recovery work that you're putting into action? So when we do a check-in, it isn't about voicing your frustrations about your betrayed partner. It's not about dumping your anxiety on them. It's really about sharing where you're at in your recovery work and your progress, and to do it in a really contained and respectful way. So here's some ideas. You might just do a simple ritual where every night you share any struggles you had for the day, how you managed them, and any successes. So maybe it's one thing I struggled with today and two things that I did really well today in my recovery. You can also put together your own brief recovery check-in. So it can include things like a feeling word, what you're currently worked on, maybe over the few days between check-ins, any tools that you've used, how you're taking responsibility for your own growth, and maybe even asking the partner to help you in a certain area if that feels like it's going to create enough safety for your betrayed partner. The Gottmans have a great check-in called a State of the Union. This one is a little bit longer, so you can look that up and find it. But it basically talks about what's going well in the relationship, what's been hard, and we can talk it through. We also express appreciation in this check-in and also request to have needs met. So it's a great one that does take a little bit longer. And of course, we always have FANOS. FANOS is the acronym for sharing feelings, affirming. So we're going to share an appreciation about your partner, sharing a healthy need that you have right now, taking ownership for something that you could have done better or that you're working on, and then sharing about your sobriety or safety or even struggles. I have some couples change the S to struggles. So really brief, honest statements about, anything that's occurring in that area. So as you do a FANOS, you can literally do it in about 15 minutes. I do know that a lot of my couples come in, or my betrayed partners come in and say they're meeting resistance with the betraying partners because check-ins are taking 45 minutes and an hour, and that does get exhausting. So again, we want this to become a routine and a ritual, so we want to make sure that it is doable. So other connection rituals can be things like going for walks besides the check-ins, also doing a weekly date night with no recovery talk, and do that consistently. I think that is really important, that you take a little break from all the hard conversations and talk about anything else that's connecting. And then the last principle I'm going to talk about is practice repairing right every time something happens when there's a disruption in the connection and the attachment. And you can do that through just simple acts of showing that you're a betrayed partner, that you care. So remember that even with all your best intentions and in all the work you're doing, you're still going to say something wrong. You're still going to get defensive. You're going to miss a trigger. You're going to cause a trigger. You're going to have an argument. But the measure of a safe partner is not that I never mess up. It's that I am committed to doing a repair when I do mess up. So here is 3 simple steps for a repair. So the first thing you want to do is just reflect on what took place, what caused the disruption, what caused the disagreement and the distress. So calm yourself, do some emotional regulation, skills and tools, and then ask yourself, okay, what was my part in this? Did I shut down? Did I get defensive? Did I minimize? What could I have done differently? Then, after you've identified that, you're going to approach your betrayed partner and apologize specifically. So don't just say things like, I'm sorry you feel that way, or just, I'm sorry. You need to attach to that I'm sorry with exactly what you did. So it could be something like, I'm sorry that I raised my voice and walked out when you were triggered. I know that you were scared and that I made you feel more alone instead of feeling safer. So we're going to talk about the specific thing that you did. And then the third thing you're going to do is ask what's needed. Is there anything that I can do right now that would help you feel a bit safer with me, that would help decrease your anxiety, that would help you feel like you can trust me? And do whatever you can. Follow through on whatever it is they ask you to do. So every time you do this kind of repair, it reminds your partner's nervous system that if there's a rupture in the relationship, you always come back, that you try to make it right, and that they're not alone. I mean, that is so important. So in conclusion, I just want to encourage you, the betraying partner, that while you cannot erase or pretend to forget what happened, because that's going to create more problems, what you can do is you can make things safer as you interact with your betrayed partner. You can be more honest, you can be more empathetic, and you can become part of your betrayed partner's healing instead of a source of ongoing harm. So, your partner doesn't want to detach from you to go create safety by yourself. What they really want to do is they want you to be safe enough, to you to be consistent in your recovery, for you to validate and have empathy so that they can lean into you. They want to see you do your work. They want to see you tell the truth, and they want to see you show up over time. And in the process of, the process of all of that, then we're creating more trust within the relationship itself. So hopefully these 10 things have been very valuable. If you're a betrayed partner, this could be a webinar that the two of you sit down and review together. And then you can share with your betraying partner the specific things that really stand out for you. So anyway, that's what I have for today.
Great information. And I go, yeah, 10 things. And I go, and yes, I was thinking it can feel overwhelming. So yes, I would encourage you. This video will be posted as well. So watch both parts. And I love that idea. It's like that, if I'm saying that really resonates with me, well, that would be a great place to start. I have a question for you on number 6. You said, if they need information, and my question is, when there's a questions about information is always, what if there hasn't been disclosure yet? Like, can you talk a bit about like what kind of information? Because if you're trying to put together a disclosure and a partner is asking for information, or, like, I want clarity on that. Could you
Yes,
help?
absolutely. So I know we get triggered, and especially in the early days of after disclosure discovery. And so a betrayed partner has a tendency to go back in again and again and again to try to get all the information because her brain wants to make sense of it. Her nervous system wants to settle down. So a betrayed partner has a tendency to go in and ask, and then the betraying partner shares. So we have this trickle disclosure. So my recommendation is that when you get triggered, that you, the betrayed partner, share with them, here's what's triggering me. Here's what I need to know. You can also write it down, and you can ask them to include it in the formal therapeutic disclosure. So try not to do the trickle disclosure prior to having that formal therapeutic disclosure. Or if you're not going to do a formal therapeutic disclosure, we've got to contain it. So how do we contain it? Well, we can contain it by you, the betrayed partner, writing down all your questions that you need to have answers to. We can bring a therapist in, and the therapist can be there to help the two of you so you can have a session where you're talking about the information in session. So again, there's the ability to get the data and get the information and have somebody there to process it with you. So that's really important. So I have had betrayed partners who want to keep going back and getting more and more information, and then they have trouble regulating. And so my recommendation is get a little notebook, write all the things down that you want to say, and then let's include it as part of, your formal therapeutic disclosure. Now, after the fact, again, maybe the same thing, put a container around it, but with that, it would be, we're not going to do it every day. Hold your questions till check-in. Maybe it's going to be one of the check-ins, we do just one time a week, we answer questions, so that we're also teaching you, the betrayed partner, to have some emotional regulation and use your skills and tools while you're waiting to sit down and have that conversation. So, and you might even share the questions with your betraying partner beforehand and let them think about those questions so they're not just kind of saying it off the top of their head. So the more we can slow it down, the more we can put structure around it, put a container around it, then the more helpful it's going to be, the safer it's going to be.
I was talking to a betrayed partner, and she had the epiphany of like, when I keep coming at her betraying partner with all these questions, it's just dysregulating, and I'm not getting ultimately what I'm hoping for. Part of it was I deserve, like, you did all of this, and I deserve to have you tell me all of this
Mhm.
stuff. But she was literally able to go, and that's not helping. And so I love what you're talking about, of like write it down. Yes, that information is important, and but having the structure, having the support, making sure that you're getting the information in a manner that's useful for you instead of making it worse for the betrayed partner, where now that's floating around in their heads. And I mean, unfortunately, you know this too, it's like the partners get so like caught up, and I can't get this out of my head, the visuals that they've made up about it or what they found on phones, etc. So it's important to have the container and safety for the partner. You know, we're talking all about how do we regulate, you know, and so yes, our betraying partner can help, but we can also take some measures to help ourselves, you know, be able to show up differently too. So show
Yeah,
up for
and
ourselves.
yes, and betrayed partners. I know this is really hard because you're thrown into this situation and you did not do anything wrong. However,
Right.
I'm going to tell you the betrayed partners that seem to regulate quicker and get to a place where they start to feel better are those that make the choice not to keep going back in with all sorts of questions and information. You do have a right as a betrayed partner to ask for formal therapeutic disclosure. You can go to your therapist. Your therapist can help facilitate that. And so it's not that you can't have the information, it's that we want to do it in the safest possible manner. And so you do have a choice, which means I'm going to choose to get out my notebook and I'm going to choose to write down all the questions, and then I'm going to give them to my partner and have, you know, him or her take it to their therapist and start working on this as part of the formal therapeutic disclosure. So remember, I know it's really hard. Our nervous system says we need it right now, but step away for a little bit, do some self-care tools and regulate, and then write down your questions.
Yeah, and we've said this before too, but I mean, formal therapeutic disclosure for therapists who are trained to do this is a common topic in the weekly peer case consultation group with Dr. Rob. So trying to do this stuff on your own, you know, this is hard. You want good results. Getting professional support for this, if at all possible, would be, you know, and not just a generalist therapist, someone who's trained to do this work. You know, if the goal is to set a foundation for healing, you want the best ability to do that. So it's where to invest some money could be really, you know,
Mhm.
a good investment. Okay, so the first question, and we would love more. My husband does not struggle with the addiction compulsive piece, but there were many betrayals. So I have struggled just as much as someone whose husband does struggle with sex addiction. My husband has done everything I have asked for to feel safe. He has worked very hard to uncover his problems. And while I see this and feel safe, knowing he is not cheating any longer, I cycle every week or so into anger. What do you suggest to help me get out of that anger victimhood when I recognize it?
Okay. Well, I'm hoping that you're working with a therapist to help you with the betrayal. So, I do think that it helps us co-regulate when we have a therapist we know we're going to go in and see every couple of weeks, and we can process what is contributing to that anger. Because you've shared with me that you are cycling every week or so, and I'm not sure where you're at in the whole process. It seems like there's been some time based on what you've said, but maybe, you know, I'm not sure. But the fact that you're stuck in the anger, it sounds like, and cycling back into the anger and feeling like a victim. If you had a window of tolerance, doesn't have to be perfect, but if you had the ability to regulate when you get dysregulated and had some skills and tools, then my recommendation is that you get in and you do some of the deeper trauma work. So that would include things like maybe some EMDR or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing on that anger that's associated with the betrayal. And so then that way we are helping to rewire your brain, because anger oftentimes is a limbic response. So remember, your limbic system is that primitive part of your brain that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So the fight response is anger. So for whatever reason, something triggers you and you're going back into that anger and you're cycling. The victimhood is kind of a mind state. So that is more about the stories you're in, the thoughts you have. And oftentimes, when we think about victimhood or whatever's going on, unfairness, and that mind state, oftentimes it moves us into then a limbic response. So you've got that anger going. So what I like about EMDR is it also doesn't just work on the brain, but it also works on a body level and it also works on a belief level. So that's an option. Another one, I love any kind of body work. So you might want to go in and work with somebody who's got a specialty in somatic therapy. So we're working on moving sensations from the body. There's another really great reprocessing therapeutic approach called accelerated resolution therapy. So if you have any specific events that you're really angry about, this particular tool has you kind of run a movie in your mind and taking breaks as you're running that movie and clearing body sensations. And there's different little visualizations you do that helps you kind of clear your body and rework the data that's in your brain and file it away in the right part of your brain. So those are all really good. Brain spotting is another one. And brain spotting is where you use a gaze point, and it's a very mindfulness based reprocessing. So as you're focusing on the anger, you find a spot that you gaze at. So your therapist has a pointer that you stare at, and you're going to feel your system activated, and things will come up. And again, we're kind of targeting the area of the brain where you're storing that trauma. So all of those are really, really good. The other thing I like is to get into a group if you're not in a group. There's something about being in a group and taking them through. I know in my groups, I take them through anger, but we do that as a part of the grief process because this could also be associated with your grief. And so we want to identify our grief and work through our grief and do some things to process the grief. The other thing you can do is you can do some anger releases. So if you start to feel yourself get angry in the moment, then maybe you do go out and I live in Arizona, so there's not snow on the ground. So I could go out and I could whack a pool noodle on the trunk of a
Mhm.
tree in my backyard, or I could throw ice against a brick fence. Maybe you want to go take a racket and get on your knees and, with two hands over your head, coming down with your body, hitting the side of your bed, and letting out, some noise as you do that. That's really important. Like you're holding the anger in your gut and you want to get it out. I get anger out lots of times by finding a very private place where people don't hear me. And I scream from my gut a couple of times and just let it out. And my body just feels really kind of exhausted after that. But I feel like it moves the anger out. So my recommendation is that we want to get to the root of it. We want to figure out, okay, what's feeding that anger? So I do think it's time for you to maybe get in and see somebody and do some of the deeper work so that you can resolve the anger that you're feeling.
Love all, and I have, I physical movement for me is really helpful. So like
Mhm.
any of those things, can help me with that. I got caught in the my husband does not struggle with the addiction compulsive piece, but there were multiple betrayals, and so I have struggled just as much as someone's husband who struggles with sex addiction. And I mean, addiction is it I'm trying to frame my words here. So it isn't okay, I'm going to use an alcohol analogy. It isn't about whether they're drinking beer or whiskey. It isn't about I drink every day or I drink, I binge drink once a month, but get drunk on those weekends. It's about the effect. And I hear the effect that this has had on you. And so what I'm curious about, and I kind of wonder if your body's, picking up on what is his plan? Like, if he doesn't, or neither of you identify this as addiction, but what is his plan to make sure that he's preventing, uncovering? Like that goes to the why, and in the addiction world, we go, that's interesting, but knowing the why doesn't keep us from not acting out. So what is his plan? What is his accountability? What is his safety net? I love Debbie was talking about having group. Well, our drop-in groups for males who have betrayed. We have an out of the doghouse for men who have been caught cheating. That might be a good work group, where the that isn't just identifying people who are sex addicts, it's people who have cheated, and there is a difference. The compulsive chronic, often falls in a category of, other things. So my questioning is, what is his plan to not do those things again? Who beyond you does he have accountability to? Because, I can't help but think your body's picking up on, there's no plan, and how is he going to not do this again, and da 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 da. So I wonder about all of those things that, could potentially be useful. So, okay. Okay. How do you resolve anger that comes from feeling a sense of injustice?
Well, this one is a little more complex because you're right. It is not fair. And it's really not fair that you're having to do this. And there is a lot of injustice. And again, we are talking right now about higher level recovery work. So I want to be very clear on that. I think one of the first things we have to do is we have to recognize that, in fact, there is injustice. There's a part of us that has to accept it. And I'm going to tell you, sometimes it's really hard to accept it, especially when you've had a lifetime of experience where there's been injustice. So a lot of times I find that betrayed partners who are dealing with something like injustice or the fairness, unfairness, that sometimes that, I hate to say it, but it traces back to earlier experiences in their life. And so it becomes kind of multi-level. So again, I'm a firm believer in trying to figure that out, because I feel like when you can identify it, shine a light on it, a lot of times it helps resolve or decrease those feelings. And then also you'll know, okay, what do we need to work on? Do I need to do some narrative therapy on this? And there's some great narrative therapies that are out there now where you would write out the injustices, and we do a SUDS level, which is a subjective units of distress scale, 0 through 10. You write it out, right? Then we check the SUDS again, and you do that in therapy. And that might help bring down that feeling of injustice. Again, like I said, maybe some reprocessing work. And the other thing is learning to have the skill set to do some type of letting go or some type of an acceptance type of a practice. So again, this is the part that's higher level, and that's where in the moment when injustice comes up, identifying, recognizing it. Sometimes I like to ask it why it's showing up. So maybe you just identify what the thought was in your mind, ask it what it's there to help you with, check in and see if it needs you to do something. Ask it if there's a lesson to learn in this moment. And then maybe at that point you do some type of a letting go or release or acceptance practice, a surrender practice. So in that moment, you're not surrendering the injustice, right? It happened. I'm not telling you to ignore it. What you're surrendering is the pain that it's creating for you in that moment. So that's the part we want to let go of, because believe me, I have it come up in my own betrayal, and it comes up and I start to get into it and I feel it in my body, and all of a sudden I go, whoa, I don't like how this feels. Yes, it's true. It was unjust. Here's what it was. And in this moment, I can choose to let it go. And I have my own little practice. I do. And it goes away. And then I'm regulated again. So again, it takes practice. Find somebody who can help you with it. If you've got even a good friend who's really logical and they can give you good practical advice and it's healthy advice, then, have somebody you turn to when it comes up. Have them help you co-regulate.
So I put in the chat, Dr. Eddie Caparucci did on 9 September of 2023. He quoted from Dr. Gabor Mate, who's a well-known psychologist, right? I guess I can't remember now, in this field, but the little nugget was, what has happened, you can't make unhappen, but what you do with it today that's where the trauma is. And so, so it, acceptance, I just did a webinar on that on Wednesday, so that's coming up a lot. And this is completely unjust, unjust, for partners, and addicts are not, and this is kind of irrelevant but sort of relevant. This didn't happen in a vacuum, so there's reasons, and that's all of interest at some point. And lots of partners go, well, they chose to do that. And yeah, at some point we do choose. But I'll tell you, when you're living in active addiction, it never feels like a choice, and we're never thinking about all of the negative consequences. We can't, and so all of that, the whole thing is horrible and unjust across the board. And the pain addiction causes for everyone, is massive. And somebody who gets in recovery can learn to do things different, and it takes partners, being willing to go, I am not going to let their behaviors completely ruin and control my life forever. And it honestly is, that is the choice for partners, is to go, this is horrible, it happened, I'm going to process through it, I'm going to learn to do things that will bring me joy, healthy boundaries. I call Debbie the queen of healthy boundaries. She's got groups for partners coming again in January. Those are the things, that you can kind of, start to find as lifelines, support, along the way. There was something I just read this week again, and it was like, the more I focus on the negative, the more I'm going to stay in the negative. My lens will be negative. The more I can learn to go, I have some gratitude. Even in all of this, I still have gratitude that, there's, I have that good friend that, will show up for me whenever, that the, I'm in Arizona too. The sun is shining right now, whatever it is, it can be the most minuscule gratitude, but you cannot be angry and grateful at the exact same time. So one of my big coping things for anger is finding gratitude, and acceptance is the answer to all my problems. And so I'll say the serenity prayer as a mantra. I will do things, but I know for me, if I'm angry, I am really hurt, but for me, anger ties back to hurt almost always, probably always. But so I'm really looking at, what's my wound, where is this pinging? And I love what Debbie was talking about, where it can go back to things. Dr. Eddie also has a book, Going Deeper for Betrayed Partners. Inner child work, again is deeper work. That's not what you would start out with, because this is now going, okay, I'm stuck, so is there something pinging back where this is being amplified? So that, could be useful too. But yeah, like this, and Debbie did a two-part webinar on grief. That, anger is part of the grief cycle, and anger at the injustice of all of this would absolutely be, appropriate. Anything else on that?
No, that's,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. All right. The next one, betrayer here. How can I show humility to my partner? I want her to see that I'm trying to be humble, but I struggle. I
I'm
love
glad
that
you asked
question.
that.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love that. Okay, first of all, um, I want you to get real with yourself, and I want you to sit down and assess, what do you do when you're not humble? What is your betrayed partner seeing you do that indicates to, them that you are not humble? And then go ask your betrayed partner, okay, when I'm not being humble and I'm not showing you that I'm trying to do the repair or trying to make things better, or, being in recovery, trying to show you that, things are going to get better. What am I doing? So get that feedback. Now, what are you going to do with that feedback? Well, you're going to take it and you're going to start working with your own therapist on shame. So, one of the things that I teach betrayed partners when they come in, so they can kind of understand the betraying partner, is we talk about three concepts. I'm going to talk about them really briefly. One concept is that an addict or a betraying partner has denial that they're working with. The other part is shame. And the shame piece is really big too. The other space that we talk about is getting them to a place of accountability. What gets in the way of accountability is denial and shame. So with denial, we move into behaviors like rationalizing, minimizing, even defending, not being willing to take accountability for mistakes and things we've done, right? Not recognizing the impact that it has had on our betrayed partner, right? We're in denial. And when we are in that space, believe me, we are not humble, okay? The other place I talked about is shame. So the shame is that belief of I am bad. We feel it deep in our body. And again, shame will mimic a fight, flight, freeze response. So if I go into my fight, I get angry. So anytime I'm defensive, right, or angry, I'm not showing humility. Anytime I want to flight and run away because it's just too much, I'm showing my betrayed partner that I don't care, right? And that's not humility. I'm not willing to sit in a hard situation. Or if I freeze or shut down, then I'm not giving them anything. So some of the work you're going to have to do is to go in and work on the denial piece and the shame piece, because I think what's got to happen over time is your partner has to see that accountability take place. Now, I do like the help them heal work, because I think that in that, because it is about 80% focused on the betrayed partner, that is a great way to be able to show space, develop some shame resiliency, and be able to communicate in an empathetic way. And you're going to have to keep that on repeat. And you've got to understand it's going to take time. But because you said I struggle, that's where why I was talking about some of the other work to do. And then it's going to take, I'm not sure where you're at in your whole, healing and recovery journey, but it takes time. We're talking 3 to 5 years. So I'm not sure where you're at in that process, but just recognize it does take time.
Uh, and I'm a huge 12-step person. So steps 4 through 9 are where we really work on things. So if you have effectively worked steps 4 through 9, of the 12-step program, you will have a pretty good list of, how you can show up differently. We just talked about this the other day too, that the last place where empathy shows up is with our partners. And I mean, it's wrong and it's backward and it sucks. And that's it's the kind of the final frontier, because that's the most vulnerable place we are. And so we learn to practice all of those things, with our accountability people, our people in our 12-step groups, because we can learn to practice that, and then we can take that into our higher risk, situation where we actually really really love this person and care about them, and we care about how they're going to respond. So but I love that you're asking this question. And the thing that I learned in 12 step was, true humility is not going, oh shucks, I'm so or I'm the grandiose. It's absolutely having a clear understanding of who and what we are. That's, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all of those things, and having acceptance for who we are, and striving to continue to be a better version of that, as we do the work. So, and I did put Out of the Doghouse, because the Out of the Doghouse is Dr. Rob's book about how men can learn to show up differently in a relationship. So if you have a solid foundation, of recovery, and you're not slipping and relapsing, then that is a great, group as well. Okay, so Debbie, I hear all your suggestions for the betrayer to help the betrayed feel safer, but what about the betrayed spouse is triggered or upset by these efforts? Oh, I am the betrayed spouse and have received a formal disclosure, and all the information was so terrible and hurtful and has gone on for so many decades and was hidden so well. I feel like my whole life was stolen from me. It's almost too big to accept grief. I feel such devastation that I struggle when all of a sudden now my SA husband wants to care about me. And it's hard to trust a few months of change when his betrayal spans decades. It's like he wants me to appreciate his efforts now, but it's hard. And is this a case of too little, too late?
Well, first of all, I just want to validate and recognize how hard it would be to have decades of things hidden from you and then to hear all about it in such a short period of time, and how, difficult it is to even be around this person that has hurt you so deeply. So, one of the first things that came to my mind as you're talking about this, I'm not sure that it is a case of too little, too late. Only you can determine that as time goes on. I'm not sure how long ago you had formal therapeutic disclosure. But first of all, I want to say that it's okay for you to have boundaries in place that protect you and keep you safe. So if he's doing things that he thinks is creating safety for you and it's not, then you put a boundary around it and you let them know. So let's say he is trying to come in and to remind you of how much he's changing. Then a boundary around that might be, you know what? You're no longer allowed to tell me how much you've changed and all that you're doing, right? Because every time you do that, it causes me to dysregulate. And so the minute you do that, I'm going to end the conversation and go take care of myself. So, what do you need? Sitting down and identifying what do you need for safety in this relationship now, knowing what you know and knowing how deep it's gone and how it was hidden for decades so well. What do you need? So, again, I feel like in your case, you can't do it alone. You need to have a really good, therapist who understands betrayal to help you work through and unpacking all this devastation that you struggle with. And as you're doing that, even unlocking the traumas about it and the grieving, going through the grieving process with a therapist helping you. And again, because I'm mind body connection, my approach that even working on getting it out of your body so that your body starts to feel better, so that you get to a place where you start to feel better. And in that space where you've put the boundaries in place to create safety for you, you've let the betraying partner know, you can't do this, or this. I'm not ready for it. Here's what I need you to do. And if you can't, then I'm going to step back and do self-care. I'll go to my support people for connection. And then making sure that you have a group or that you have a therapist that is helping you through all of this, because it's a big load you're carrying right now. And that's why it feels so hard. And it does feel like it's too little too late. But I want you to get to a place where you've healed and that you're kind of in this space of, I'm no longer deep in the grief. And then you can make the decision and decide if it is time to move out of the relationship.
I did. It's a horrible pain. And you are not his cheerleader. Dr. Rob talks about that all the time of like, we go to our meetings so that we get a chip and all of those people are going, yay, 30 days, but partners are going, but look what you did for me for decades. I'm not going to celebrate that you're not doing what you were never supposed to be doing in the first place. So that's why, him having his support and structure and accountability, is key. But I love what Debbie was talking about. I did put the boundaries work group link in the chat as well. So consider that, for you. It starts again January 6th. I would invite you to consider that. Okay,
Can I just add
next,
one other thing?
please. Yeah.
I know I think of the analogy in your situation of a tornado, right? You've had this big tornado come through your life. I mean, the destruction, the devastation is unbelievable. And it's almost like your betrayed partner has gone and, cleared out a small little piece of the property and said, look how nice it looks, right? When there's devastation and destruction all around. And so they've got to understand that it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time, and that they need to do it without the betrayed partner cheering them on and being their cheerleader. That's not a good dynamic. So anyway,
I love that visual too. Like I have the whole
yeah.
visual of like, oh, this little
Hmm.
tiny spot is good. Yeah, I planted a flower. But
Hmm.
then there's the wreckage. Okay. My husband grew up in a narcissistic family system. How do you suggest he overcome the distorted thinking and belief system?
Well, my answer is going to be really, really simple. You need to search for a therapist who works with narcissistic abuse, somebody who really understands that. So it's going to take them going into and doing some childhood work, right? And really understanding that and kind of getting to the root of it. So there's going to be some trauma work involved. Another thing I like is I like somebody who does internal family systems, which is another therapeutic approach, which I think is really, really helpful. You've got to understand when you grow up in a narcissistic family, system, there is a lot of shame within that system. So you also want to make sure the therapist really has a clear understanding of shame. So you get help. Get somebody who can help you. Make sure they're qualified. Make sure they have the tools to help.
And this would be if there's sex and porn addiction, you absolutely want a CSAT who's trained in those other modalities because, like it doesn't happen in a vacuum. We talk about this all the time. Of course, there's, family of origin stuff. There's always something, in the backstory, for every, one who finds a maladaptive coping mechanism.
Mhm.
So, and you said narcissistic. Sometimes that also means, enmeshment. So if there's enmeshment there, Dr. Ken Adams did a podcast with Dr. Rob. It's the number one podcast of all the podcasts, on when he's married to mom. I
Mhm.
think that's what it is, or overcoming enmeshment, whichever. So there's and John Taylor did a two-part webinar on mother enmeshment. And so we've got some resources about that. That if that is a fit, there's a lot of sex addiction and mother enmeshment or family enmeshment that can be at play too. Do you have time for one more?
Sure.
Okay. How do I cope with my wayward partner isn't doing the work? He has addictions, alcohol, bulimia, and potentially sexual compulsion that he's not seeking help for. And it's really hurting me that he lacks initiative to get help. It's only been external motivators and not that internal motivation to seek help. He says he knows he needs help, but doesn't understand why he doesn't have the passion to do any work. I feel unsafe and hurt that he doesn't want to do this individual work. I'm in counseling and seeking all the support groups, but he isn't doing the same. He was once engaged to his own counsel. He was once engaged um, in his own counseling for 2 months, but compartmentalized it to only discuss his eating disorder. He stopped drinking for about 4 months, but is now back drinking. So he's in active addiction. So
Yeah, well, I'm going to recommend you also take the boundaries class because um, this is going to be a hard one because sometimes you're right. There has to be external motivators to cause somebody to wake up, to make change. And so we've talked about even in the past formal therapeutic separations. I think I did a webinar on it. And so that might be something you consider that you give them a timeline as to what you need them to be doing. And then at that point, you might set the boundary that I'm going to seriously consider doing a therapeutic separation or a healing separation, which is very boundaried with lots of things in place about the work you're going to do while you're apart. And sometimes, and what the research really shows is the number one reason that people seek treatment for addiction is because they're going to lose their significant other. And it's sad that that's what it ends up being, and that's the motivator. But when they feel like they're going to lose the relationship, that's when they finally have the internal motivation to do something. Your situation sounds really, really difficult. So I'm really glad to hear that you're in counseling, you're in support groups. Keep doing that. Get yourself stronger. If you are resistant to being able to do a therapeutic separation, then get in and work on that. See what's getting in the way, because that might be your best chance of getting your partner to finally do their own recovery.
yeah, I often say nothing changes if nothing changes, and he's not motivated. You are. You're doing all the work, and he's not motivated. He's in active addiction. That this is the comfort level is this is what I know. This is how I do all of this, and say this often. Addicts don't know what they're missing out on because they're so focused on hanging on to the problematic behaviors. We don't know, until we start getting into recovery and healing. And if he did, you know, uh, checking a few boxes for a couple of months, he doesn't know, we have a residential treatment program. He's very much a candidate. He would not be, it's 14, 21, or 28 day length of stay. he would not be a 14-day length of stay with the problematic behaviors. But these are high risk behaviors too. Bulimia, substances, sex addiction could be a high risk. So there's high risk for, really, I mean, sometimes life ending, problems. So, but long-term chronic, physical issues as well. So you can't change him. Healthy boundaries. I also did put Dr. Rob does a one-time 2-hour expert consultation with couples. He does them with couples around the world. It's done via Zoom. Often that can be validating for partners, but also the nudge that some addicts need, or at least the partner goes, "Oh, this person has talked to an expert and is still not willing. So what does that tell me?" That's the data. So I'm sorry, and I hear honestly, like, yes, this is a really difficult situation, and you are not alone. I mean, many partners are dealing with this. He's just not motivated. He won't do anything, and that's just unfortunate. Not every addict chooses to get help. Many die in active addiction. So what do you need to do to take care of you, regardless of what he does or doesn't do? So
Yeah.
take care of you. Take care of you.
Yeah.
And so I put the link for the boundaries group. Please, please consider. Don't consider it. Choose you. Sign up for the boundaries work group. It'll be really helpful for you. So, okay, I'll see you in 2 weeks, and then I asked you about January. Let me know about
Yeah,
the.
I'm going to send you a text on
Yeah.
dates. Okay.
Okay.
So,
All right. Sounds good.
okay.
Thanks, everyone. Bye
Bye.
bye.